All right, this evidence of shared values. So if we have these shared values in the American political culture, what evidence is there that we have them? You've heard a speech given on the 4th of July or some other patriotic time. They talk about American values, Americanism. There's nothing similar to that in other political cultures. Consider the era of McCarthy. There was the House on Un-American Activities. In other words, there were certain things Americans just didn't do. And if you did them, you were un-American. You've probably used that expression yourself. Oh, that's un-American. So we use these terms, and we perhaps haven't even thought about it. But there is no equivalent in other political systems. There's no un-Frenchism. There's no committee in the French Parliament on the un-French activities. Just nothing similar in other cultures. Next time you're at a 4th of July speech, listen for these kind of things, and they will just pop out everywhere. Just pop out everywhere in that speech. But even throughout life, there's just certain things we don't do in America because it's un-American. People say it almost flippantly. It's it's just taken for granted that we don't do that. Now, if we actually have these values, that we've been claiming, why is it that there's so much conflict? And one of the reasons there is conflict is because we have, in fact, strong values. But the values themselves are often in conflict. For instance, we believe in equality, that no one individual is better than another, especially and at least politically. But we also believe in liberty. The interesting dynamic between liberty and equality is, if I truly have liberty, I can use my liberty to infringe on someone else's equality. If someone has equality, they can infringe on my liberty. If equality makes us all equal, that does not provide liberty, and liberty should give me the ability to do whatever I want, even if it hurts someone's equality. And so we have these strong values, and the values themselves are in conflict. You'll see this when we get into civil liberties especially, that one value is in conflict with another one that we hold dear in our political system. So the values themselves are strong, and those values themselves can be and often are in conflict. We value more than just one thing. At times we put equality over liberty, and at times we put liberty over equality. All right. So I said we'd get back to this idea of economic liberty. We're doing that right now. So in America, there's wide agreement for economic individualism and personal responsibility. Now, this is currently under attack in 2020, where you have the Democrats basically arguing for greater equality, not just politically, and there's nothing wrong with politically, but they're really arguing for great equality economically. And this has always been around, perhaps never under more attack than it is right now. Here's two views. Kinder and Sears basically have the same view on this idea of individualism and individualism and personal responsibility. They basically argue that economic individualism is symbolic racism, a kind of plausible camouflage for anti-minority attitudes. And so you see some of this going on today as well. So people who believe in this economic individualism are attacked by others from this kind of idea, that it's systemic. It's a way to camouflage our anti-minority attitudes and to proceed with the status quo. Snyderman and Gray, on the other hand, this is what they have to say. These individuals' values are not a smokescreen for bigotry, but a genuine commitment to the ethic of self-reliance. What has made America strong? Has America been made strong because we give handouts to everyone, or has America been made strong because the individual has been encouraged to provide for him or herself, and you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, not dependent on anyone else, and if you're going to make something out of yourself, you just go do it. What has made America strong? That's the question. Let me give you an example of this. If any of you are familiar with Lou Holtz, he was born in 1937. He's a retired American football coach, and he's an active sportscaster, or was an active sportscaster, motivational speaker. This is what he had to say relative to this idea. He said, Democrats would turn this upside down, meaning this idea that you got to provide for yourself. Those who achieve are to be punished as enemies of society, and those who fail are to be rewarded as wards of society. Entitlement will replace effort. So this is his argument that he's making. If the Democrats get what they want, this is what's going to happen. Entitlement will replace effort as the key to upward mobility in American society. If Democrats get what they want, we will sink to the lowest common denominator of society, in which the government besieges the successful and productive to foster the equality through mediocrity. The Democrat Party speaks of two Americas, and their grip on power, meaning the Democrats' grip on power, is based on using the votes of the one to sap the productivity of the other. America is not divided by differences in our outcomes. It is divided by difference in our efforts. This is exactly kind of the thing that Snyderman and Gray are saying. So here's Lou Holtz. He's obviously buying into this. He's also buying into the idea of the orthodox camp. So you see here, this progressive camp and this orthodox camp are alive and well in our society, as seen here, and you see this debate in high gear with the election of 2020. All right, let's take another look at this idea of individual responsibility. So, and I realize this survey is done a long time ago, but I find it interesting because it was so it was originally done in 1924, and then the authors of the study said, hey, it's 1977, let's see if anything has changed. So they went to a high school in Indiana, if I recall correctly, and they asked the students there, seniors there, a number of questions. These are not the only ones they asked, but they're the ones that pertain to the topic we're on. They ask, is entirely the fault of the man himself if he cannot agree? Do you agree with it or disagree with that statement? And then another question, the fact that some men have so much more money than others shows that there's an unjust condition in this country ought to be changed. So you see here both the progressive and the orthodox and the progressive view. This individual responsibility versus society responsibility. And what happened with this? This is how the outcome came. So a majority or a plurality of people certainly felt that it was the fault of the individual if he couldn't succeed. While comparatively only 30% felt it shows there's an unjust system. And so then the authors, some 50 years later, decided, I wonder what people think now. So they went back to the same high school and conducted the same survey, and the results were, well, before I show you the results, what do you think the results were? Were they markedly different? Had we moved more to the progressive camp? What were they? Consider that for a second. Where do you think they went? Where would they go if we were to add another column right here? It's been, again, almost, it's been 43 years. What would happen if we added another column there? Well, almost 50 years later, this is what happened. Roughly the same, particularly with that first question, exactly the same. It had gone up a little bit in that second question that some people felt there was a unjust condition. But so with this, you see, and this is the takeaway from all this. Individuals in America have this view more, that it is the responsibility of the individual to succeed for him or herself. Again, it's not that society doesn't ever give them a leg up, but ultimately it's their responsibility. And we are having a major debate with that in our society now. All right, moving on to the next thought here. One of the things, so there's some sources to our political culture. We don't just have this political culture out of thin air. So one of the things that has given that has influenced the political culture of the United States is that we struggled through a libertarian revolution. What do I mean by a libertarian revolution? I mean a revolution that was based on the idea of liberty, that individuals ought to have liberty from their government. Not liberty on everything, but liberty on most things. So we struggled through this libertarian revolution, and it's given to America an adversarial spirit. You can't do that to me. I have rights. We have this assertion maintenance of rights. Even when we're talking to police officers, we think, nope, there's certain things you can't do to me because I have rights. You hear this all the time when people are talking to police officers. You'd think they'd be especially penitent when they're talking to a police officer, but no, they assert and they maintain their rights. Even with when our boss fires us, no, you can't do that to me. I have rights. And why is it that we have this view? In part is because in our history we went through the struggle of a libertarian revolution, and we have liberty. We have the right to do what we want, and that's just become pervasive in our society. In addition to that idea of this libertarian revolution that we went through, let me make one other statement about that. Countries that haven't gone through this libertarian revolution don't have this assertion and maintenance of rights. France went through a revolution, but it was an egalitarian revolution, a revolution about equality, that they were all equal. And so it has not worked the same way there. This libertarian revolution has really impacted our political culture. Another impact on our political culture is religion. Religion. Founding fathers' belief concerning human nature, you remember that we asked that question, that it was evil. Why did they believe it was evil? Well, because of the consequence of original sin. Why did they believe in original sin? Well, because they were religious. They were religious, and that's what the Bible taught. And so religion has impact our political culture. And today, you look at this today, the average American compared to the average European is much more likely to believe in God, to pray daily, and to believe in standards of right and wrong compared to the average European. There was a survey done in 1990 to 1993, and it revealed that it was a worldwide survey of democracies, of Western European democracies. And it revealed that America was the only country that reached the 80% plus threshold of people identifying themselves as religious. So religion has played a major impact in our history. You've seen, based on what I've talked about so far, how it's influenced the founding. It influenced Abraham Lincoln. You'll hear even politicians talking about it today, whether or not it's genuine or feigned. It's part of who you are and what you think of the politician. But it is just interesting that even today, politicians will try to evoke God to advance their side. Now, this idea that we are religious compared to other countries. When Mitt Romney ran for president, he gave a speech trying to say that if he was president, his Mormon religion would not instruct what he did as president. In other words, Salt Lake City, the headquarters for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, sometimes called the Mormon Church, would not be running the show. And he pointed out the fact that in America we are a country with religious liberty has impacted who we are. He served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in France, and he said that when he went over there, the churches were so ornate and so beautiful, but come Sunday, they were so empty. That's because they were state-sponsored religions. In America, we don't have state-sponsored religions. The government doesn't run the church. And so because of this, we have a vast number of churches in America. And people go there on Sunday, and it influences who they are and what they think. And this religion cannot be underestimated, its impact on America. All right, that is American political culture. I hope that helped.